Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something huge, something almost everyone thinks about, finding the one. That search for real connection, that spark, that deep desire for love that actually lasts. There's so much advice out there, it's kind of overwhelming. So today we're going deep. We're exploring the real nature of love, using some really powerful insights and help you figure out what genuine connection looks like, understand yourself better, and build relationships that actually work.
Exactly. And the mission here really is to help you navigate this whole complex thing with more clarity. Because, the goal isn't just finding any love, it's about finding true love. The kind that, as our sources really emphasize, flows both ways. It needs that solid foundation of self-awareness and real compatibility. So we're going to unpack what it really means to love and be loved authentically. And crucially, how you can maybe avoid some of those common traps that lead to wasted time and, honestly, a lot of heartache.
Okay, let's get into it. It sounds almost too simple, but our deep dive suggests the starting point is actually a really personal question. Do you truly love them?
Yeah.
It seems basic, right? But what we found is that often what feels like love,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't quite love. It might be infatuation, maybe an unhealthy kind of attachment, or sometimes it's driven by other things entirely. We end up choosing partners based on this, like false sense of safety or security.
Right. And it's fascinating how often people do that. They think, oh, well, they love me so much, this must be safe, this must be right. But when you really look at it, that safe choice, it often turns out to be completely wrong for you. True love, real love, it has to flow both ways. It just does. If you're in a situation and you don't feel that back and forth, that mutuality, chances are, it's probably more about being swept up or maybe attachment than actual love.
That's a huge point. It forces you to really look at your own motives, doesn't it? Are there specific things, like common mistakes or red flags, that people tend to miss when they're confusing these feelings? Because if we're defining love as more than just that heady feeling, more than infatuation, what does it actually look like?
Well, the sources we looked at consistently point to things like kindness, real compassion, patience, deep patience, and genuine understanding. It's also about being willing to be selfless, to really give. You have to ask yourself honestly, what am I truly willing to do for this person? Am I ready to meet their real needs consistently, even when it's difficult?
Yeah.
Because if the answer isn't a solid yes, maybe it wasn't love. Maybe it just felt good, or you got caught up in the moment.
That's a high bar,
Mm.
especially the selfless and giving part in a world that often tells us to, get yours or prioritize yourself first. How do you actually embrace that kind of giving without feeling totally drained? Like, what's the practical way to do that?
Well, it's maybe less about feeling drained and more about seeing it differently. True giving in a healthy relationship isn't really a sacrifice in the negative sense. It's more like an investment, something that actually fills you up too because it's reciprocal. But here's another layer the sources highlight. Even if that genuine two-way love is there, it might still not be the right time. If someone hasn't healed from past stuff, past traumas, or just isn't emotionally ready, moving forward isn't the answer. It really drives home that love needs patience. It takes time to nurture properly. You need to be ready for it.
Okay, that brings up something I think a lot of us struggle with, this tendency to dive in head first the moment we feel that spark, that love feeling. Even when maybe deep down we know there are issues, like our own baggage or readiness. What's the real danger in rushing like that?
The danger is you're building on, well, shaky ground. Simple as that. Society doesn't exactly push us to do that slow, patient work on ourselves first, does it? Before trying to build something with someone else. But you need that understanding, that patience, to make something last. If you rush, you just drag all the unresolved stuff into the new relationship, and that creates friction right from the start.
Right. And that initial spark, the chemistry,
Yeah.
it can be so powerful, but also, as you said, maybe misleading. So if chemistry is just the intoxicating start, what else is needed?
Right.
This brings us to what we're calling the 3 Cs: connection, chemistry, and compatibility. They sound similar,
Right.
but they're really distinct, and people mix them up all the time, especially early on. Let's try and break these down.
Okay, yeah. Let's start with chemistry, because it's usually the first thing you feel, and honestly, often the most confusing one. Chemistry is that immediate zoozing, you know?
Yeah.
The butterflies, the physical pull. It's actually physiological. It's tied to dopamine, that reward hit, and cortisol, the stress hormone, firing off together. It's intense. So it's not just pleasant. It's almost like an addictive high. And our brains can easily mistake that intense excitement for deep connection. Understanding this is key because it explains why we often chase that thrill instead of doing the slower work of building real connection. You can feel chemistry with lots of people, and that's where the trouble starts thinking, this is it. This is the one. just based on that spark.
Oh, yeah, definitely been there. You get swept up thinking this intense feeling must mean something profound, and then,
Mm.
oops. So if chemistry is that fizzy, potentially deceptive thing, what makes connection different? Is it just like chemistry turned up to 11 or something else entirely?
It's something else entirely, much rarer, much deeper. The way it's described is like your spirit recognizing its counterpart. It's this almost instant sense of ease where you feel you can just be yourself, no need to put on a performance or be the representative version of you. It's more about a fundamental alignment, like your paths, your core purposes. They just seem to resonate. You feel understood on a different level. People who felt true connection often say it's only happened like once or twice in their entire lives. It's a resonance that chemistry just can't touch.
Wow. Okay. So chemistry can happen often. Connection is super rare. Where does compatibility fit in then? Is that just the practical stuff?
Compatibility is, well, it's the ability for two people to actually build a life together, to coexist day to day in harmony over the long haul. I used to think of it as just, on paper stuff, like do you have the same hobbies? Do your friends get along? The dating app algorithm kind of thing. But the sources make it clear real compatibility is way more than that. It's about deep understanding, yes, but also a real willingness from both sides to adapt. It's like the essential add-on after you have connection and chemistry. It's what lets you actually build something functional and harmonious together. It's the framework.
Adaptability. That sounds key.
Sure.
Knowing how much you're willing to bend and finding someone who's willing to meet you there. But I think so many of us, we get so high on the chemistry, we actively avoid asking the hard questions, the ones that might reveal incompatibility, right? We don't want to, like, blow up the fantasy.
Oh, precisely. That fear of loss, or just fear of spoiling the good feeling, makes us dodge the important stuff. We avoid conversations or ignore red flags that could actually tell us if this has long-term potential. And that fear doesn't just hurt the potential relationship, it makes you lose yourself too, because you start compromising on who you are right from the beginning. You build a fantasy, and fantasies, well, they don't last.
Which leads perfectly into this next crucial piece, authenticity. And, not wasting your time. Being your real sustainable self from day one. It sounds so obvious, but man, it's tough in practice. What are some common ways people mess this up, like pretending?
Oh, absolutely. Anything you're doing that you can't keep up long term, it's setting you up for failure. Think about someone pretending they love, I don't know, fancy restaurants and expensive trips when they're actually perfectly happy with quiet nights in and can't really afford it, just to impress someone.
Yeah.
Or maybe suppressing your need for, say, regular check-ins or deeper conversations because you're scared of seeming needy or too much. The other person falls for that act, right? But eventually, the real you, with your actual needs and preferences, has to come out. And then conflict, resentment. It's just unsustainable. You can't keep up a facade forever. It's exhausting.
And then you find yourself maybe years down the line realizing this isn't working, feeling like you've wasted so much time. How do you spot that earlier? Because we cling on, don't we?
Yeah.
For all sorts of reasons that aren't actually love, like, oh, I don't want to start dating again, or, but he's such a nice guy, or we've put so much time into this already.
You really have to get brutally honest with yourself about why you're staying. Is it genuinely about the connection and future potential? Or is it fear? Fear of being alone, fear of the dating scene. That's just a recipe for staying stuck. Those relationships built on fear or convenience, they don't have strong roots. They'll likely crumble eventually. Some pretty clear signs you might be wasting your time if your partner consistently shuts down conversations about issues. Or they agree there's a problem but then do absolutely nothing to fix it repeatedly. Or, the big one. If you're just fundamentally not aligned on major life things, kids, money, where you want to live, core values, those are huge red flags waving right in your face.
And intuition plays a big part here too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially, the sources suggested, for women. That gut feeling, often very early on, that whispers, something's not quite right here. But then we rationalize, we make excuses, and end up unhappy for way longer than we needed to be.
It's incredibly common. So many people look back after it finally ends and say, you know what? I knew pretty early on this wasn't it. That inner voice, that gut instinct, it was there. It just getting ignored or explained away. Learning to trust that intuition early, it can save you immense amounts of time, energy, and just pain. It's probably one of our most underrated tools in relationships.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The whole idea of relationships being hard, is that true? Or is it more about needing work? I hear this debated a lot. What's the distinction?
It's a really important distinction, actually. Most relationships that have that true connection, that deep love, they don't start off feeling insurmountably hard. Now, they can feel difficult, absolutely, but Usually, that difficulty comes from other places, like individuals bringing unhealed baggage, past trauma, operating from fear, or just having terrible relationship advice. It's the struggle with those internal things that makes the relationship feel hard. But once you navigate that initial phase, once that real connection is established, and you're both committed,
Mm.
it's not hard in that draining, soul-crushing way. It takes conscious effort, yes. Mindfulness, active listening, communicating consistently, that's what I'd call work. And that work is productive. It builds things up.
So the takeaway is if it feels consistently painfully hard, maybe you're just in the wrong relationship. And those relationships that seem easy, maybe they're just skimming the surface, riding on chemistry, and avoiding the actual work needed for depth.
That's often the case. They're avoiding the deeper realities. It is significantly harder, day in and day out, to try and make it work when you're fundamentally mismatched. With the right person, the effort feels, well, worthwhile. It's constructive work, not just an endless uphill battle. The sources are pretty clear on that difference.
Something else interesting that came up was this idea of balancing masculine and feminine energies, not in a stereotypical way, but within individuals and the relationship itself. How does that actually play out?
Right, and it's crucial not to see this through a rigid gender lens. We're talking universal human qualities. So masculine energy is often linked to things like direction, logic, taking action, drive, leadership. Feminine energy embodies qualities like intuition, empathy, collaboration, being receptive, emotional depth. Everyone has both, right? Regardless of gender. The key is balance. Knowing when your dominant energy serves the situation and when you need to consciously tap into the other energy. For instance, maybe a man who's typically very driven and logical needs to consciously access his empathy and compassion in a difficult moment with his partner. It's not about losing his core strength, but balancing it. It's not choosing one over the other. It's about flexibility and knowing what's needed for the relationship's health in that moment.
And that ties into vulnerability too, doesn't it? How sometimes that fear of loss makes us clam up or become people pleasers, always seeking approval. But the sources actually reframe, showing compassion, being the one to soothe things in a tough moment. They frame that as a position of power, not weakness.
Yes. That's such a powerful reframing. So many people think being kind or offering comfort when things are tense means you're losing or giving in. But actually, if you're the one capable of bringing calm, understanding, and peace to a heated situation, you're the one steering the ship. You're guiding the energy towards resolution instead of getting sucked into the negativity. That's real strength, and this applies to everyone. Feminine energy isn't weak, and masculine energy absolutely includes empathy and protective care.
Okay, but sometimes, despite all the understanding, all the work, it just isn't working. It's time to let go.
Yeah.
How do you really know when that point comes, and what does letting go actually mean then?
Well, some clear signs are when a partner is just consistently unwilling to do the work. They won't engage, they won't change patterns that are hurting the relationship, or if you've tried communicating clearly, maybe even laying it all out in detail, like in a letter, and there's just no movement, no real effort to address the core issues. If you've genuinely tried everything and nothing changes, that's a strong indicator. And letting go doesn't have to mean never ever. It just means acknowledging that right now, under these circumstances, this cannot work. It's accepting reality, not closing a door forever necessarily, but closing it for now.
And the breakup itself,
Yeah.
it's brutal, not just emotionally, but physically too. The sources talked about the brain reacting like it's detoxing from a drug or feeling actual pain.
Absolutely. That broken heart feeling, it's not just poetry. Your brain chemistry goes haywire. You register physical pain. You go through withdrawal, that intense craving to reach out, to check their social media, even when you know it's bad for you. That's the addiction pathway firing off. Your brain wants that fix. Knowing that it's biological can actually help you fight it. You have to consciously override those urges, remind yourself why it ended, not just romanticize the good parts.
But then the flip side is that breakups, as painful as they are, can actually be, well, a blessing in disguise sometimes.
Yeah.
An opportunity to really look at things and maybe heal stuff that goes way deeper than just that one relationship, like old patterns.
100%. If you're carrying around unhealed wounds, the stats suggest you're something like 90% likely to keep picking the wrong partners. It's like trying to see clearly with smudged glasses, right? Everything looks distorted. Healing cleans the lens. It helps you see yourself and others much more clearly. You start recognizing what you actually need and deserve. And that healing work, it has to be for you, for your own future well-being, not just a tactic to try and get someone back. That's crucial. It's about self-investment.
And having someone in your corner during that healing, a friend, a coach, a therapist, someone to keep you accountable, seems really important.
Yeah, definitely. Someone objective to help you stay on track, challenge your thinking, and remind you of your goals when things get tough. And trying to embrace the long view of the pain. Sometimes the hardest things, like a necessary breakup, are actually protecting you from years more of unhappiness and immediate pain. It can pave the way for future gain, future happiness that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. And really feeling your feelings during the breakup, processing it all, leaving no stone unturned emotionally, that helps prevent those what if doubts later. Gives you peace knowing you understood it fully before moving on.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive on finding true love, the big takeaways seem to be it really starts with knowing yourself, with healing your own stuff first. We learned connection is way deeper, much rarer than that initial chemistry buzz. And real compatibility isn't just shared interests. It's about genuine adaptability day in, day out. And relationships, they definitely take ongoing work, conscious effort, but with the right person, it's productive work, not that feeling of constant draining struggle.
Exactly. And if it does feel like that endless struggle, that's often a pretty big sign you might be trying to force something that isn't right. The path isn't about finding perfection or avoiding problems altogether. It's about building something real, something resilient, based on self-awareness and a shared willingness to grow together.
So here's something to think about as you reflect on your own journey with love, past or present. If you could truly accept that the biggest challenges you face in relationships are often the very things that push you towards your deepest personal growth,
Hmm.
how might that change the way you look at love and even heartbreak?